Hello and welcome to A Genteel Black Hole, the home of my bookish rambles. My name's Ali, and insert joke here. Man, I really need to finish writing my script before I record these. It's the new year. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope 2025 is as peaceful a year as it's possible to be. I'm starting my second year on BookTube, and it's time for my December 2024 reading wrap-up. It turned out to be a great reading month for me. In the end, I finished 5 books, ranging from very good to one of the best things I've ever read. So, yeah, we'll take that. Just a quick content warning for this video. By some weird coincidence, almost all the books I'll be discussing include themes of suicide. If that's not something you're comfortable reading about, I would suggest avoiding pretty much all of the books that I mention in this video, with the exception of Hogfather. And if you're not comfortable hearing about it at all, then please, for the sake of self-care, just skip this video entirely. Anyway, there's lots of books to get through, not to mention all of the music and TV stuff, so without further ado, my first book of December was Inspector Imanishi Investigates by Seicho Matsumoto. I actually read most of it in November, but I finished it in December, so yeah, you get it. This is a murder mystery from 1961, and judging by the author and the title, you may not be entirely surprised to learn it was originally written in Japanese. I read the English translation by Beth Carey. The story begins with railway workers finding a tuner on the tracks, code for a dead body. The victim has been strangled, his face mutilated beyond recognition. Witnesses say they saw 2 strangers talking in a local bar the previous night. The victim, the older of the 2 men, had a thick regional accent, and both men were overheard mentioning someone or something called Kameda. As Inspector Imanishi digs diligently into the case, he keeps encountering the Nouveau Group, a multidisciplinary collective of radical young artists who are currently making waves in the establishment. But every time Imanishi thinks he's onto something concrete, another would-be informant turns up dead. Very inconvenient. I really enjoyed this one. It was my second Matsumoto book. At the start of the year, I read Tokyo Express. This one's about 350 pages long, and the plot is maybe a little slower paced than I'm used to from the likes of Agatha Christie, but it gripped me the whole way through. Matsumoto is great at slowly building tension. I'd say I'm a moderate fan of classic Japanese cinema, and I could easily imagine this as one of Akira Kurosawa's noir thrillers, although the slower pacing and the pauses for meals and haiku writing and bonsai tree shopping adds a dash of Yasujiro Ozu to the mix as well. Imanishi's methodical investigation is very satisfying to read. Even the seeming dead ends turn out to contribute to the eventual solution. The red herrings were very effective. I did not guess the killer, but I felt like I should have. And that's exactly what I hope for with a good mystery. Inspector Imanishi himself is an interesting sleuth. He's an exhausted, middle-aged, married man whose hobbies include tending to bonsai trees and writing haiku. If the author himself hadn't been Japanese, I might have accused him of stereotyping. Along the way, we learn little bits about Imanishi, as well as Japanese culture, history, and even linguistics. That strong sense of time and place makes it stand out from the numerous English mysteries I've read. And it's also the best Japanese mystery I've read so far. I definitely recommend it, and I definitely want to read more Matsumoto this year. And continuing the theme of books in translation, my next read was The Seagull by Anton Chekhov. This is a play from 1895, originally written and performed in Russian. I read an English translation by Peter Carson included in this Penguin edition of collected plays by Chekhov. I've been meaning to read some Russian classics for a while now, and this is the first one from my list that I managed to tick. Do you get it? Because you thought I was going to say Chekhov. No? The action, if action is the right word, takes place on the country estate of Pyotr Sorin, a retired civil servant. Sorin's sister, the renowned actress Irina Arkadina, is visiting with her son Konstantin and her lover, the famous novelist Boris Trigorin. Yes, I did look up a pronunciation guide. As the play begins, people are gathering on the grounds of the estate to watch a new play written by Konstantin. The lead actor, in fact, the only actor, is Nina Zarichnaya, a young woman from a rich family that lives across the lake. Konstantin is besotted with her, but she is unconvinced either by him or his play. It's a radical, experimental work of symbolism, which almost everyone agrees is dull and unrelatable. Irina considers the play a personal insult and talks all through it, until Konstantin, in a rage, aborts the performance and storms off. This incident, along with a tangle of unrequited loves, a cluster crush, if you will, establishes the conflict that builds throughout The Seagull. Konstantin is a disaffected young man, struggling to find his own way in the world. His relationship with his mother, Irina, is fraught, and he's deeply jealous of her lover, Boris, ostensibly for his success in the literary sphere, although I'm sure Freud would have something to say about that. Meanwhile, Boris bemoans that his own literary renown isn't greater. He's good, but he's no Turgenev, and he isn't satisfied romantically either. He sets out to woo Nina, causing further turmoil for her, Irina, and the suicidal Konstantin, putting in motion a series of events that ultimately leads to tragedy. There is also a literal seagull involved, but if I try and explain the whole plot, I will be here all day. This was a fascinating and thought-provoking read. I feel like I got a lot out of it, but there's still more to discover, more to understand. One thing I don't yet understand is why Chekhov himself classified this play as a comedy. It's surely one of the most harrowing things I read in 2024. And I read Of Mice and Men. Perhaps seeing it in performance would help to reveal more of the inherent humour. But I kind of doubt it. Being a Shakespeare nerd, of course I was intrigued that Chekhov draws parallels between his characters and the cast of Hamlet, going so far as to have Irina and Konstantin quote from that play. Konstantin is the obvious Hamlet analogue. He has a fraught relationship with his mother. He's bitterly jealous of his stepfather. He puts on a play which causes uproar and is called off. And his killing of the gull, like Hamlet's killing of Polonius, has a disastrous effect on Nina's state of mind. But it's, not just a rewrite of Hamlet. There's a lot more going on. It also deals with the idea of thwarted dreams, the fact that you can't always get what you want. You could say Chekhov walked so that Mick Jagger could strut. Boris and Konstantin could be seen as representing opposing sides of a literary argument, the two extremes of symbolism and realism that Chekhov was trying to balance in his own work. And there's the theme of casual cruelty. Konstantin kills a seagull for want of anything better to do, much as Boris seduces Nina and then discards her, destroying her life in the process. Yeah, it's a real laugh riot, this one. I will say, the Russian names posed a real challenge for me at first. Everyone has a patronymic middle name, as well as multiple nicknames. Konstantin is also Kostya, Maria is also Masha, etc. I had to keep referring back to the character list in the front to keep everyone straight in my head. But that did get a bit easier as the play went on, so the prospect of reading more Chekhov feels a bit less daunting to me now. The Seagull is easily the shortest book I read in 2024, but it's given me a lot to think about, and this review is getting kind of out of hand, so yeah, let's move on. I'm not sure Chekhov will become a favourite writer for me, but I'm definitely looking forward to trying more of his plays. The next one I plan to read is the next chronologically as well, Uncle Vanya. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes sometime in the coming months. But now, extra, read all about it. The next book I tried to read in December was Scoop by Evelyn Waugh, but I made a whole video about why I DNF'd it. I'll put the link up here if you want to see the whole thing, but to summarise, just appallingly racist. Moving on. Scoop left a bad taste in my mouth, so I decided to wash it out with some poisoned champagne. Sparkling Cyanide is a murder mystery from 1945, written by the Queen of Crime herself, Agatha Christie. A beautiful young woman called Rosemary Barton dies by cyanide poisoning at her birthday party. Her death is ruled to be suicide, but months later, her widower, George, receives anonymous letters that claim Rosemary was in fact murdered. If that's true, the killer must have been one of the guests at the party. But who could it be? Rosemary's younger sister, Iris, the sole beneficiary of Rosemary's not inconsiderable fortune? Stephen Faraday, an ambitious politician who's desperately trying to keep his affair with Rosemary a secret? Stephen's wife, Lady Alexandra, who may have known the secret all along? Ruth Lessing, George's devoted secretary, who may have harboured hopes of being his wife someday? Or Anthony Brown, a man with a false name and a disreputable past? George decides to find out by restaging the party, enlisting his old friend Colonel Race to investigate. When the second party leads to another death by cyanide, it's up to Colonel Race to figure out who done it and why. Yeah, I enjoyed this one. Admittedly, I do miss Hercule Poirot. Neither he nor Miss Marple make an appearance here. Poirot's occasional sidekick, Colonel Race, is a pretty good replacement, though, and the suspects weave an intriguing web of motives, with enough red herrings and obfuscations that, like my favourite murder mysteries, again, I didn't guess the killer, but I felt like I should have. And although this doesn't have a lot in common with The Seagull, there are plenty more Shakespeare references. There's the repeated quote from Hamlet, "Rosemary, that's for remembrance." And Stephen and Lady Alexandra echo the Macbeths, an ambitious married couple who seem to suspect each other of the murder, each of them willing to cover for the other. But did either of them actually do it? It's not quite top-tier Christie for me, though. The characters are memorable, but not unforgettable, and it doesn't have the ingenious plotting or the atmospheric settings of classics like Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, or And Then There Were None. But it delivered pretty much everything I hope for when I pick up a Christie book. Maybe not a must-read, but definitely one I'd recommend. But next, 'twas the night before Hogswatch. My one concession to seasonal reading this Christmas was Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. This is a comedic fantasy from 1996, and it's the 20th in the Discworld series overall, and the 4th in the Death sub-series. It's Hogswatch Night, the Discworld equivalent of Christmas, but the Hogfather is nowhere to be seen. Death, being a fellow anthropomorphic personification, takes it upon himself to drive the Hogfather's hog-drawn sleigh, deliver the Hogswatch gifts, and make sure people still believe in the Hogfather. If Death fails, humanity may suffer a fate worse than, well, him. But this wouldn't be Pratchett without an intricate tapestry of subplots. There's the sinister Mr. Teatime on an unlikely assignment from the Assassin's Guild. There's the Wizards of Unseen University, investigating a spate of spontaneously created new gods, such as the Veruca gnome and the O-God of hangovers. And there's Death's adoptive granddaughter, Susan, who finds herself dragged into these supernatural events despite all her best efforts to be normal. This book has some of my favourite Discworld moments. There's Death handing out Hogswatch presents to eager children at Crumley's department store, assuring a concerned parent that a sword is educational. What if she cuts herself? That will be an important lesson. There's Susan as a no-nonsense governess, a sort of goth Mary Poppins, who won't tolerate the children's cloying cuteness, and who deals with the monsters under the bed by attacking them with a poker. And there's the beautiful final message that we need fantasies to make us human. We start out believing the little lies so that we can learn to believe the big ones. Justice, mercy, duty, etc. Because believing them is how we make them come true. Which is why I always find myself wanting to like Hogfather as a whole more than I actually do. Don't get me wrong, it is very good, but it's safe to say that Pratchett is my favourite author, and I know how much I adore his work at its very best. By anyone else's standards, this book would be a triumph, but grading on the Pratchett curve, it's kind of at the upper end of the mid-range. Part of my problem is the pacing. The Unseen University subplot starts to get repetitive after a while. One wizard makes a careless quip about the cheerfulness fairy or the eater of socks. Said being appears out of nowhere, causes more chaos, and the wizards theorize as to why all this is happening. Rinse and repeat. This book also has more than its fair share of indistinct supporting characters. Some of the university staff are very memorable. Arch-Chancellor Ridcully, Ponder Stibbons, the Bursar, and of course the librarian. If you know, you know. But the others just get kind of dumped into a box in my brain marked Assorted Wizards. Who is the lecturer in recent runes, the senior wrangler, or the chair of indefinite studies? Trying to keep track of them is in itself an indefinite study. And I have the same problem with the Mr. Teatime subplot. Teatime himself is a wonderfully creepy villain, but the criminal gang he hires gets shoved into another mental box, assorted gangsters. I really can't tell the difference between Peachy, Cat's Eye, and Chicken Wire. Banjo is the only one that really stands out, and I suppose Medium Dave, by virtue of being Banjo's brother. Maybe I'm being too hard on this book, but it's a frustrating feeling, wanting to like a book more than you actually do. It is good, but it's just not quite the festive classic I wish it was. But I ended my year on an absolute classic, albeit one that's not the least bit festive. And if I had a penny for every time this month I read a classic translated play from the late 1800s named after a bird, I'd have 2p, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. The Wild Duck was my first time reading Henrik Ibsen. Imagine my surprise when the so-called father of modern drama, second only to Shakespeare as the most performed dramatist in the world, turned out to be really fucking good. Who knew? In fact, I loved this play so much, it ended up as one of my favourites of the whole year. So, to stop this video becoming absurdly long, I'll save my full review for The Wild Duck for another video. I also started 3 more books in December, one of which I finished in early January. That was How Steeple Cinderby Wanderers Won the FA Cup by J.L. Carr. I received that for Christmas, thanks to my brother David. I had put it on my Christmas wish list, having loved J.L. Carr's beautiful novel A Month in the Country, but whether or not Steeple Cinderby Wanderers lived up to that, I'll tell you in my January wrap-up. I also made a start on another Christmas gift, Far from the Madding Crowd, by Thomas Hardy. Thanks to my bestie Rachel for that one. It's lucky I've made the conscious decision to ditch numbered reading goals this year and let myself read longer books, because despite only being 350 pages long, not counting footnotes and all that bump, the print is so tiny and the language so dense that it's likely to take me at least 3 weeks of daily reading to actually finish it. But yeah, I'm loving it so far. Apart from the fact that Penguin Classics saw fit to put massive plot spoilers in the footnotes. Thanks. I hate it. And I'm also gradually reading David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. As I mentioned in my recent TBR video, I'm reading that in a less regular and regimented way, picking it up in the afternoons when I have the time and the inclination, and when I'm not recording. It'll take me months to finish it, but that seems kind of fitting since it was originally published in serialized installments, and so was Madding Crowd, come to think of it. Is 2025 the year of the serial? According to my TARDIS notebook, I watched 13 episodes of Taxi, which took me to the end of Series 3, 8 episodes of Only Connect, including some seasonal specials, 5 episodes of Junior Taskmaster, which took me to nearly the last episode, 4 episodes of Cheers, which started Season 4, 2 episodes of Make Some Noise on Dropout TV, 2 episodes of Portrait Artist of the Year, and 1 episode each of Doctor Who, the Christmas special, Great Pottery Throwdown, also the Christmas special, Bill Bailey's Master Crafters, and Gastronauts on Dropout TV. I also managed to watch 2 films, one of which was new to me and one was a rewatch. The new one was Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, which was really fun. Nice to see Feathers McGraw back in action. And I think maybe I do still kind of prefer the half-hour short films from Wallace and Gromit. I think they're just a little bit tighter, but, any time spent with Wallace and Gromit is time well spent. So, yeah, I did really enjoy that. And the rewatch was I Know Where I'm Going, the Powell and Pressburger film from 1945. And a bit like Hogfather, that's one that I kind of find myself wanting to like more than I do. It's beautifully made and acted, and there's nothing wrong with it as such, but there's something about it that just doesn't quite work for me. And it's a romance where Wendy Hiller plays a kind of ambitious young woman who's about to marry a rich man who's much older than her. And when she's trying to get across to the island where they're going to get married in the Scottish Highlands, there's a massive storm and she's stuck on the mainland and he's stuck on the island. And while she's there, she meets someone else and starts to fall in love with him. And it's kind of obvious that this other guy is actually a much better fit for her. And, part of the message seems to be that she has to kind of give up her love of money and her kind of ambition and be happier and more satisfied in a smaller life, which, I like that message. It's nice, but the man that she falls in love with is the laird of the island. So, doesn't that kind of undermine the whole message? He may not have money as such, but he owns the fucking island. So, yeah, that one doesn't quite work for me as well as I want it to, which is a shame because Powell and Pressburger made some of my absolute, all-time favourite films, especially The Red Shoes, which is, in my top 10, maybe my top 5, is amazing film. So yeah, a decent film, but slightly disappointing. Music-wise, my most played artists were Cheer Accident with 10 albums again. That includes one by a side project called Stopped Clocks and one solo album by Tim Jones. 3 albums for Henry Cow, and also 3 for John Coltrane. 2 albums by John Cale, 2 by Black Sabbath, and then 1 each for Frank Zappa, Fred Frith, Genesis, Herbie Hancock, The Kinks, Lake of Puppies, Miles Davis, News from Babel, Paul Simon, Peter Gabriel, The Soft Boys, Steve Reich, and Wayne Shorter. Of those albums, the ones I would most recommend would be A Love Supreme by John Coltrane, which is, I mean, there's a reason why it's considered one of the greatest albums of all time. It's like not much longer than half an hour, but it's just solidly, transcendently brilliant from start to finish. And like easily my best listening experience of the year. It was great to revisit that. It's an old favorite, and it reminded me why it's a favorite. I would also recommend Paris 1919 by John Cale. Now, John Cale is probably best known for being a member of the Velvet Underground, and I never really got into the Velvet Underground, but John Cale's solo albums are really fantastic, and I revisited Paris 1919, which is maybe his best. And you know, as a bookish channel, there I will definitely point you in the direction of the song Graham Greene. I would also recommend Introducing Lemon by Cheer Accident, which is another one of their very long albums, which goes through all kinds of different styles and things, and I don't really know how to describe it other than to say it's a journey and it's brilliant. And one new to me discovery was Let Us Home by News from Babel, which is a short-lived band which featured several members of Henry Cow and had guest vocalists including Robert Wyatt, one of my absolute favourite artists of all time, and also, fascinatingly, Sally Potter, who is also better known as a film director. She directed the adaptation of Orlando, the Virginia Woolf film. So, turns out she's also a really good singer. So, that's everything I read, watched, and listened to in December. But how about you? Have you read any of the books that I mentioned? Can you recommend any other classic playwrights I should try? Whatever your thoughts, why not let me know in the comments? I'm always happy to hear from you. But that's about it from me today. I hope you're having a lovely day, and I will see you when I see you.